Hi everyone. So just to continue on from what Dr. Chen was saying, we thought it would be good to just present our experiences across an age range. So I'm hoping to cover 0 to 4 years old, and then Jane will take over the other side, which is 5 to 9, 8 years old. So if you have any questions, just feel free. We want it to be free-flowing and totally casual. Yeah? Okay, so we can start. I'm Charmaine. I'm Singaporean. I grew up here, and I'm a product of the local education system. So primary school, secondary school, JC, and then I was previously a lawyer, and I stopped being a lawyer to go into early childhood education. So I started Between Two Trees Preschool in 2009. It's a project, bilingual project learning school. So we do project learning and structured learning, kind of similar to what Eton House does as well. Are any of you parents at eBridge? Yeah, you're a parent here. Okay, so you're quite familiar with what Regio-inspired means and all that. What is a bit different from us here is that we have half of our children local and half of our children being international. So there's the concerns are a bit different. But with our local children, the concerns are very similar. You know, everyone's going to primary 1. So then the big concern usually is about primary 1 readiness and early literacy. And then making it relevant to today, it's learning how to read and when the children are ready to read. So that's been my work for the past about 10 years. I also volunteer at AECES as vice president. So that's where we come together and we do different little projects together. And this is one of them. So wherever we try and contribute in little ways for educators, but also for parents, for the betterment of young children. We also, personally, I've also co-written a book called Bilingual Project Learning in a Singapore Preschool. So that's my latest thing. Okay, so just to run through what we are going to be doing today, we're going to be doing 3 big things. We will talk about what the issues are when we read to young children. Jane and I will share our experiences and also how we've tackled different issues. And then we also talk about daily routines, how we actually encourage children to love learning. Because it's a moving process and things keep changing every year, it's also relevant to point out at which age group some things don't work or some things work. And then after that, we'll do a Q&A, so feel free to shout out your questions. Yeah? So according to the studies which we got from our NTU partners, the top 3 barriers that came up for reading was A, lack of time, and then it's difficult to get the child's attention, and also a parent not being confident in making reading enjoyable for children. So these are the 3 big ones that I think got the most response. I'm not sure, does anyone want to show me a raise of hands? Do you feel like sometimes you don't have enough time to read to your child? And then another time it's hard to get the child engaged. And then the third one is you're just not confident in the whole process. Is there anyone who feels that way? Because I definitely do. I respond very well to these 3 factors. So just to share with you my personal journey, my daughter's called Ray, Jen Ray. She's 4.5 years old. Right from the beginning, as an educator and as a parent, my starting point was that literacy is not just about words for her. And also from 0 to 4 years old, it's always been more visual. It's never been about recognizing letters. I've never actually pressured her to know her letters, to know her phonics, because I know all of that as a curriculum. So my definition of literacy is really a more holistic one. Literacy can be visual, so really recognizing pictures, basic things like recognizing your grandparents and people in your family. Those are the big ones. Also, we looked a lot at spatial reasoning. You know, we played a lot with tangrams and we talked a lot. We just made it at an early age, I think my big thing was connecting language to reasoning. So the reasoning could be spatial, it could be visual arts, it could be just using different materials, and painting, and also just getting her hands busy. So that has been my whole journey so far, right? I mean, of course, I've got many questions as well, because she's going to be turning 5. So then we've got that P1 pressure coming up because she's K1. So I mean, as a local parent, I feel it, even though I know that as an educator, there are other milestones. Yeah, so we can talk about that. So reading, I feel, is strongly, it's really just one part of language arts, and language arts can be broken down into so many other things. It's writing, it's debating, it's learning to enjoy the process of a story. So reading is just one little part of the whole spectrum of language arts. So this is a video I wanted to show, and it plays now. Does it play? Okay, no, it won't play. I can show you later, but the point, I wanted to show you Ray reading at 2 years old. You can see this, there is no way she is reading these words. She's not recognizing them, but she's recognizing the pictures, and she's also recognizing the flow. So she knows if you kind of break it down, you can see she's holding the book upright. She knows that she's turning left to right. She knows that there's a sequence, and she exclaims. So I'll show you later how, and then later on I'll show you how she is at 4 years old, so that you can kind of track it, and then you can base your own child's progress or your own child's journey. Okay, so just to share with you my own list of barriers, at this point when I was preparing the slides, I was thinking hard about the barriers that were brought up by the NTU group. But so I definitely agree with them. Within the space of time, within the space of a day, I constantly feel like I don't have time, and I have about 70 other children to worry about in my preschool. So a lot of times I try and lump my child in. So I definitely feel like I don't have time a lot, and I think sometimes when you only have 10 minutes of a pocket, it's very hard to try and get my child interested, And sometimes for me, I'm like, I don't get it. That child in school is so interested. Why can't you just be on my page, Because I'm on a timeline, and I think sometimes also I'm also really not. I'm really thinking she's not having fun, or rather, I feel like it's not worth for her to be having fun now when I have all these deliverables, Like, okay, today we're doing phonics. Let's do phonics. And she's like, I don't want to do phonics, I want to do Star Wars. And, there's that constant struggle of fitting her into my timeline. And then to add on to these barriers, I think as a parent, a lot of times I'm wondering whether something's appropriate. So whether something is actually age appropriate or even culture appropriate for Singapore or for our family. And then as an educator, my other big barrier is really considering like, what is the learning outcome? What is the point of this? Are we wasting our time? Because our time is so precious, right? So I feel like as I was preparing these slides, it's really an ongoing journey. And it's all about just writing out all the issues that I have.
Look at all the beaks. Oh, this one over here. What's this big one? Wow. Oh, the honeybees.
So just to highlight, something that I've learned from this and doing it every day without filming is that it's really important to give the child time to respond. So in the same way with these books, with all these science books, whenever I'm asking her, what something is. You know, I have an internal expectation that she'll know what's an angelfish or a shark or a whale. But for the longest time, it was all fish. So it was just fish, and it takes like a few seconds. But she is grabbing it, you know. In the same way, like when we go to the bird park, you know, for the longest time, I was like, hornbill, eagle, and she's like, bird. I was like, for a long time, I was like, it's all birds. How long are we going to be doing this for? But actually, it's an investment in time and effort and giving her space to respond, because now at 4 years old, she is telling me the different species of birds. And I truly believe that it's an investment. It's because of the time that we've spent right from the beginning, going to the zoo, looking at these fish, going to an aquarium, you know, talking about all these animals, you know. So then that's my barriers that I talked about. So for me, it's a running commentary. The issues and the problems always keep coming up, and I try and keep a log of them. And it changes with each age. At 2 years old, my big problem was bird, fish, you know, cat, you know. But in my head, I was like, no, there's leopard, there's panther, there's puma, there's lion. And she's like, cat. So that was the 2-year-old phase, you know. So I'm just trying to share with you, like, at every age, there is a recurring burning issue for me. So I just thought that, you know, because of the 3 barriers that the NTU group brought, we can actually talk about it and actually reason it out. And if you agree or disagree, just let me know. But the number 1 barrier about lack of time, the big thing for me is that when you think about it, reading, doesn't need a lot of time. 10 minutes a day is fine. 5 minutes a day is fine. Just pointing out any kind of literacy is fine. You know, even if you're reading a signboard, even if you're reading a menu, even if you're reading a brochure, it's all part of reading, right? So then I just did a quick count, and like, if you just read 10 minutes a day, that's like 304 hours for a child who's now 4 years old. So sometimes I'm like, when I ask myself, am I reading enough? I'm like, okay, it's been 304 hours, so that's not bad, mommy. So, you know, just keep going, right? Got no choice. And then the other thing about having not enough time, I was thinking, what do we not have enough time for? Do we not have enough time to go and actually read or to get new books? So then another thing that I kind of used to kind of encourage myself and my husband is also to say, you know, we read and reread our books. And each time you read a book is a different experience. That's the beauty of reading a book, you know. So we read, and we've read books literally more than 100 times, and she knows the exact sequence, but sometimes she says it as a song, sometimes she says it as a drama, sometimes she says it to vent her feelings, but every time there is an experience. So at a very young age, I just kind of try and be part of that journey with her. And then barrier number 2 about it being difficult to get a child engaged and keeping the child interested. One big thing that I've always done, also because of my interest area, is that we read to like raise interest, you know. So it's also listening out for what your child is interested in. For about 3 months at one time, it was durians, because it was durian season. So, you know, our drama was trying to get the best durians over the weekend. So we'll queue up, we'll get durians, and you know, she sees that everyone's excited and we all like, boom, go for the durians, right? So then for 3 months, it was all about durians. We brought durians, she drew durians, she ate durians. She did printing of durians. She just did everything about durians, and it was coming from her. And we found books on durians. We read about durians. It became very experiential. And then another time, it was about cutting. So this was again 2 to 3 years old. She was cutting everything. So she basically went to sleep with scissors and woke up with scissors, and she was just cutting. And it became, we found books related to cutting too. So I think the point was, we really tried to read to what she was interested in, and it's so different. There isn't a schedule. It's you kind of have to throw away the rule book and say, oh, okay, let's talk about family, neighborhood, whatever. There isn't a set sequence. It's more of what she's interested in, and then also encouraging her in that way, you know what I mean? The other way, another tip I probably have is we also listen to audiobooks and we watch movies and plays together with the books. To be very honest, it's a lot easier to play the audiobook because there's music, they say it so, they speak so well. So that's the convenience factor. But the other way also is to introduce many other things. Like for Ray, our three favorites were Peter and the Wolf because of the orchestra music. It really brought in a lot of conversations about different instruments and timing and pace. So even you would be surprised for a 2 to 3 years old, she can tell me, you know, Peter, the wolf sounds angry. You know, that linking emotion to the music. You know, so Peter and the Wolf has been very good for us. We still watch it. It's about half an hour on YouTube. So you can actually just look for it. And then there's also Skippy John Jones, which is like a series, and it's very quick, it's very American, but it explores a lot of different accents. So that helps her also listen out for accents, and that's something that she identified with very quickly in Singapore also. And then now that she's 4, we're looking at Charlotte's Web. So because she's 4, she's you know, very conscious about things like dying. She's asking what's dying, why are we eating meat, why are we killing our friends. Little bigger issues like that can be handled by reading books together. Yeah. And then I think the other thing also in getting a child engaged is just doing a very everyday things. This is really how Ray learned how to read. One time we were at a mall, and when she was 2.5, and she just exclaimed to me, you know, you cannot do anything here. You cannot do everything here. You cannot move. And she just stood there. And I was like, why can't you move? Then she's like, look there. And it was all the symbols of cannot. So she was like, you cannot kick a ball. You cannot cycle. You cannot skateboard. You cannot. And I was like, on one hand, I was like, oh my goodness, you're learning all this. It's very Singaporean, right? But the other thing is like, you're reading the images, you know? So there are pros and there are cons, but then it's an image. So, you know, just learning. Or for example, in a lift, you know, when they learn, they're reading all these images of what you can do in a lift. Or in a toilet, how to keep the toilet dry. You know, we're very heavy on all these images, but they're actually very rich for us to have conversations with the children. And since we've started that, you know, she's now 4 and she's pretty independent with reading. So you can see, like, this is a picture taken by her recently. We were waiting for a plane and she got her notebook out and she started writing about the plane, and also she started copying script on whatever she saw on the plane. And then she was reading the brochures. I mean, sometimes it's a bit dark. She'll go like, oh, if the plane crashed, what will we do? You know, so it's all these emergency procedures, but it's also very valuable because she is reading, you know. And then I've got Ray now reading. She's 4 now, and she's reading a tour pamphlet. I mean, there are a few things here that we're reading. I just want to point out, we're not reading any of the words, obviously, but she's reading all the pictures and she's reading the map. So this is a repeated conversation. We just grabbed this brochure. We're nowhere near going. It's actually about skiing in Japan, but we're nowhere near going there. But it was just very good because she started, from this, we started reading about strawberry farms. We started reading about onsen. She's talking about the man without clothes. And also about snow, you know. So it's about, you know, having those conversations that you don't even, there are a lot of possibilities through all these materials because we clearly don't have snow here, but we have a lot of conversations about different weather and climates and stuff like that. So then another thing also that we do a lot is to keep her engaged and also keep her interested. We actually read a lot of books that deal with problems. So the 3 big buckets that I have is emotions, especially anger and jealousy and sadness. Those are the things that sometimes I find it very hard to talk about. Then the books become very instructional and they share. So it's not so much, it gives them an opportunity to engage directly with the book rather than tell me what's going on with her. So these are the books that we read a lot. Lama Lama Met and Mama. There are many different sources on the internet, but these are the ones that we find in the library. Other things that we also use is like when she goes to the dentist for the first time, when she goes to a hospital for the first time. All these are all different opportunities for us to read about. And recently, when we went traveling, we actually saw beggars, and that's something that you don't see in Singapore. Or, so those are also other ways that we actually bring up. And I know she's interested because she's actually open. She's asking questions. Yeah, so that's another way that I keep her interested. And then I guess the third big barrier that the NTU folks brought up was not confident in making reading enjoyable. So one thing that I've always done is I've always tried to make it experiential, and I try and make them related. So if whatever book that I see, I try and relate it to how we can make it an experience. And the easiest one is the zoo for like 0 to 4 years old, because there's so many animals, there's so many opportunities. For us, so for example, reading about zebras was a thing when she was 2. But when we went to read about zebras, we also went to the zoo. She got the map. She pasted the map. She got the brochures. And then one thing that struck me was also she remembered where the giraffes were in relation to the zebras. So it's not just about reading the map, but she could remember how to get to the zebras. So it's all, I think when it's a whole body experience, it just becomes very entrenched for her. And she's very used to now reading, for example, like if we're at the Botanic Gardens and there's a swan and then there's an exhibit on the swan, she's very good at relating. So that's for a 0 to 4 year old, that is also one of the key things that you can look at for early reading. Yeah, so I mean, just to compile all the strategies, I think the ultimate goal is to nurture a real love for learning. So these are all the things that we do that I mentioned before. We read to her interests, we make it experiential, we watch movies and plays and audiobooks, we listen to audiobooks. We also go to the library every week, and we make it into an outing. So no matter how difficult it is, I try and go to the library for like half an hour and just let her have that routine. And then I guess when we buy books, it's a big thing, so if it gets delivered. And also we read and reread a lot, and like I said, also we use the books to deal with problems. So my husband's very on top of it with me as well. Yeah. And then I guess the other strategies that I didn't mention is, these are more lifestyle. So things like, my husband and I, we read a lot on our own. So constantly she knows quiet time. When we have our own quiet time and we don't want to interact, we're reading on our Kindles or on our books. And that's a familiar image that she sees. And I also put books everywhere in our home. So there are baskets of books everywhere. It's very easy to do. You just dump 3 books in the toilet, in the living room, dining room, everywhere, where she's putting on her shoes. And also she becomes very used to picking up a book when she's waiting, so when there's waiting time. Another thing that I learned from my husband, who's not an educator, but he actually introduced the concept of wordless books. So books that are just very heavy on visuals, obviously because he's into comics. But he bought a lot of books that are all pictures only. And it's actually surprising because every time when you read a book, it comes out a different way because of the detail. And that actually translates very well into composition in the future when it's primary school time, learning about sequence and detail. And yeah, and the other thing also that Ray and I do a lot, we read cookbooks. So she actually carries a cookbook now around because she's always constantly finding out what she needs to buy from the supermarket and then figuring out what she wants to cook. Yeah. And then, so now we're at 4 years old. So I just wanted to show you, our issues keep continuing. While the goal for nurturing a love for reading continues, we're now dealing with a different situation, which is now there's a set curriculum at K1, K2 that is for P1 prep. So even with my educator hat on, my challenge is really looking at the pros and cons of like blending phonics and memorized reading. So I thought I'd just share this one with you. Is it this one? So this is her.
Okay, today we're going to film Raya because she started.
So she's learning how to blend. So I just want to show you the difference between how you read when you're blending, i.e. really reading, and how you read when you memorize your book. And then I can tell you about what I think are the pros and the cons. And then maybe we can share about that later. So the point of showing you that is when you're blending and reading, I did it to compare also because as an educator, I was interested, right? When you're reading, you literally read 5 words and they really don't make sense. Like if you saw it was cat, 10 cat, sad, mad, you know? But when you're reading from memory, there's so much more energy and she's so much more excited about the story. So at 4 years old now, I am kind of balancing the both of them because at this point she is learning how to read, but then there is so much more excitement and so much more energy when she's reading something that she knows the story to repeatedly. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for us. For me, our journey continues and the issues just keep changing, and I'm continuing to log them.
Okay, thank you, Charmaine. Let's give a round of applause to encourage her. Oh, well, from what she has said, I'll just summarize it in kind of 2 sentences. Reading is a whole life, it's a package of life experience, right? I mean, going to the zoo, it's just not reading words, okay, but it's a whole package, how you share the experiences with children. It's a whole life package. The other point that she made is that you see how the young child started with reading just pictures, yeah, and how it moves from pictures to words like sat, cat, and, and then at the end, you see that she has this idea that actually these words, which actually are like squiggles, right, is actually connected to reading. So that's how, reading develops from pictures and then to words. Okay? So Jane has another lovely story to share, and so let us share the story, and then you can ask all the questions that you have in your mind.